on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you are with us tonight. It is Tuesday, May 18th, and as we continue to work our way through this coronavirus shutdown and moving into opening things back up, we are talking tonight about, do you feel safe or do you feel unsafe as you go back to work? If you feel unsafe, what can you do about it? Is enough being done to protect workers? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We certainly want to hear from you, and we are happy to have with us our guest, Billy Dycus. He is president of the Tennessee AFL-CIO. So Billy Dycus joining us via Zoom. There you are, far, far away. Thank you, Billy, for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
So what are you seeing? The question I posed there, do people feel safe going back to work, and what can they do if they don't? What are you hearing right now?
Well, a lot of concern about returning to work and actually having the proper protection that you would need to go back into the workplace. Things are not always cut and dried, and this is definitely something different. We're in uncharted waters, as when it comes to the workplace and how we work and where we're going. And as I was alluding to earlier, one of the things that you can't do, is measure pain and fear. And so. What is a worker to do when he says, I don't feel safe? And how does that person relay that to an employer that's trying to open a business and get back to work? So it's a very difficult thing. Now, there are provisions in the OSHA guidelines, in the general duty clause, that says if you feel imminent danger, then you have a right to refuse, to say, I'm unsafe, I don't feel safe, and I can not go to work. The only problem with that is that, you're in a situation, unless you're represented by a union, that, those things, you can say those things, but that doesn't and would not preclude the employer from terminating your employment. Now, is he going to terminate your employment for saying you're in an unsafe environment? Probably not. He's going to terminate your employment. And in the state of Tennessee, because you're in a right-to-work state, the employer has the right to terminate your employment at any time. Without giving you a reason, you can be terminated. So it's going to be a difficult transition. And you really and truly, most people, I believe this, want to go to work. They want to work. It's a comfort zone. I think, some of, the things that you've seen, around the country with the protests and stuff, you can only, keep a person away from the things that they treasure, and work is one of them. I know that kind of sounds crazy, but I think most working people want to go to work, and that's where, outside of your family, that's kind of like your lost cousin, that you find again, and those people at work you spend almost as much time anymore in the workplace with people than you do at home. So,
I agree with you.
I
agree that people do want to go to work. They are desperate to get back to work. What are you hearing, though? Are you hearing that people are concerned or fearful for their safety? Are you hearing a lot of concerns at this point as we're kind of at the beginning of going back to work?
The biggest concerns I'm hearing is if I go back to work, am I going to be properly protected? Is the company going to provide me, if I feel the need for a face mask, or if I feel the need for gloves, or is there going to be hand sanitizer available? Is the employer going to be able to provide those things so that, myself, Billy Dycus, is going to be comfortable going to work? And that's especially right now, we just tried to order some hand sanitizer just for the office here and to give out to some of our members. And they're talking 6 to 8 weeks for a 2-ounce bottle. So, as we start trying to open back up, are those supplies going to be adequate? Are we going to have adequate testing? And what's going to happen, when somebody does test positive or has a fever? How are we going to handle that? Not only by the employer, but the employee. Is he going to be back out on the unemployment, or is he going to just be out there dangling? And that's some of the concerns that that I've heard.
We're showing video right now, which I don't know that you can see, of a mall. Right before that, we showed video of a restaurant. And so these are some of the jobs people will be going back to. What sort of recommendations would you have for them if they don't feel safe? How much power do they have, in your opinion, to speak up and say, we need more hand sanitizer, or I don't feel safe about this or that? What about some of the workers who are going to be out there? Again, we're looking at restaurant workers, retail, that kind of thing.
Well, collectively, they have a lot of power, but it will take more than a single or maybe 2 or 3 employees to stand up and say, look, these are the things we need. It's going to be difficult without a labor union that has the ability to protect you, because discipline is based on just cause. So it's going to be difficult for that person that's out there. And the thing about it is a lot of these folks, these are not real high-paying jobs in the first place. And some of these restaurant workers are working 3 of those restaurant jobs. They may be working in 2 or 3 different restaurants. So, it's going to be difficult for them to speak up. And it's going to be a trying time for them and the employer. Now, look, one thing that I want to say is most employers are good people. I'm not saying they all are, just like with anything else. There's always good and bad. But most employers are good people, and I think they'll understand. I think they understand that these employees are valuable. I think we've all learned. I think one of the big things coming out of this is what we have learned about the people that are out there every day serving us food, or working in the grocery stores, or at the places we would have always thought were really not essential to our livelihood. But I think we've now seen that they are more part of the economy than we ever imagined. And not only the economy, but our own well-being. And so, they have leverage. They just don't have as much leverage as they did if they were collectively all together at once.
So I, in the course of this pandemic, have interviewed more people with labor unions than I have in many months prior to that. I've interviewed people with labor unions that represented workers in the poultry industry at the chicken plant down in Shelbyville. I've interviewed people that represented construction workers, and each time they kind of spoke for the workers there, and those workers were clearly concerned. What impact has this had on labor unions? Do you think there is more interest in people trying to join them, or is that something employers frown upon, and then there is not that interest? I guess kind of what has this done in your opinion for labor unions?
Well, I think it's reinforced the need for labor unions. Look, there's always a conflict of some type when it comes to an employer and employee relations. But I do think that as a labor representative, as a representative of labor unions across the state of Tennessee, I think that most people that deal with us would say that, we are more pro-business and pro-company than they would have ever imagined. And that, so I think people, and this may sound a little corny, but, I say this a lot, and I may get in trouble for this, but, being a part of a labor union is much like being a member of your church. We call each other brothers and sisters. We believe in the same things. We try to make sure that we're all taken care of, and we believe that when one boat rises, all boats should rise together. And so, I think that, I tell people this: if you ever get a taste of it, much like with religion and your belief in God and those things, then you'll want some of it too. And that's, that's kind of my personal take on it. But I do think that, we've got our issues, and we've had our good days and our bad days, and we've had good and bad in our ranks too. But I do think that, when it comes to protecting an employee and a company, I think we're best suited for doing that. And I think as we move forward, I think people are going to see it.
Do you have an example where you feel like a union has really made a difference in this pandemic? So in the last 2 or 3 months, is there something that stands out to you where maybe a collective group of employees has been able to stand up and get something they wouldn't have gotten otherwise? Is there an example that kind of stands out to you?
And I don't remember exactly, and I just read it today, out in Washington State, not in the state of Tennessee, there was a group of farm workers that collectively stood up and said, look, this is not right, this is not safe, we're not going to go to work. And they didn't collectively. Well, the employer needed them, and he came back and says, well, while we're working through this, we're going to give you an additional $100 a week, and we're going to take the precautions to keep you safe. And I think if you look at Kroger's and with the UFCW and how they work to make sure that there was additional money put forth for those folks that waited on us in the grocery stores, especially Kroger's. I think that's a classic example of what collective bargaining can do and what unionism in itself can do for working people.
So, and we'll get back. I'm just interested in this whole topic. Why do you think membership has not been growing or maybe even declining? I mean, you would know the numbers better than I do. The influence of unions has declined. There's no doubt about it, certainly in Tennessee. Why has that been happening in recent years? At least that's my impression. Correct me if I'm wrong. But why do you feel like that has been happening?
Well, I think that, along with a lot, and, I could get into if you really look back, and I'm going to say this, if you look at a lot of different variables over actually the last 30 years, and you go all the way back into the 50s, when union membership was about 33% across the country. It started as companies started to move away from labor unions. They felt like labor unions had too much power, and maybe they did. But as that happened, and then there was a lot of different catalysts, especially with the passage of NAFTA. And then you started seeing in the rural communities here in this state, there was always a shoe factory or a shirt factory or a sock factory, and most all of those were union labor workers. And so, you saw all those dynamics come together at one time. And I think that the powers to be that don't want anyone represented by labor have done a really good job of telling you how terrible we are, and that that we're the enemy. All we want to do is collect your dues and put you out on strike. We don't care about your company, and when we've been the scapegoat for companies boxing up their factories and moving to Mexico or China, when in fact that wasn't our doing. That was doing the politicians. So I think it's a multitude of things that kind of all fell in place. And to be honest, we weren't prepared. And not only we were not prepared, we relied on politicians to do what we should have been doing, and that's representing our people. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And sometimes I get in trouble for saying those things, but we have an obligation to the people that we represent. And when you start allowing politicians to make those decisions for you, then you pay a political price. And our members and folks that have distanced themselves from labor unions have made those decisions on their own. I mean, even our own members have been trying to tell us for many, many years that they don't like the direction we're going. And I think, though, as with most things, it's kind of like the pendulum has swung. But I do think that pendulum is going to swing back. And I think you're going to see working people start to see that, there's plenty of giveaways in this country to corporations. But where's the giveaway to the working man? Where is that giveaway? And the only way they're ever going to get it back is through collective bargaining and organizing. unions. That's where it's going to come from. If not, you're going to be out there held prey to whoever you work for. And if you're comfortable in that situation, then that's fine. I understand that. If I say this, if you don't want to be in a labor union, you want to be a part of a labor union, that's okay with me. Right to work doesn't scare me. What scares me is that we divide ourselves so much politically, working people, not corporate giants, but we divide ourselves politically, and we move party to party, and we get into all that. But at the end of the day, the working people of this country is what made this country, and the working people of this are going to be the ones that take it back and make it what it's going to be going in the future.
Fascinating. All right, we're going to start taking calls in a moment, but I'm going to bring it back to the coronavirus here and the pandemic. I guess, grade the employers that you're aware of. Do you feel like, I did a story earlier about the number of complaints to OSHA, to Tennessee OSHA, and there were tons, and workers were scared. Now, I think it's also fair to say that some employers were kind of overwhelmed. You talked about the hand sanitizer. It was hard to find. So I guess, what have you seen from employers during this time of the pandemic, and what do you expect from employers in the next few weeks here as we all go back to work?
Well, I think the key word there was overwhelmed. I don't think that we were well prepared going into this, and nobody was prepared. So I think the employers and employees are very skeptical of what it takes to make the workplace safe, I think most employers are trying to do the right thing. I do believe that, but it's as with anything, that employer has bills to pay too, so he's trying to make a decision on, should I open, shouldn't I open? I have a good friend that's been in the restaurant business for 30 years, and I talked to him last Friday. He's not going to reopen. So it's not worth it to him. He said it costs more to reopen 50% than it does to operate his business. So I rating employers, my heart tells me that most people are going to do the right thing. But I also know that there's going to be those employers out there that are more worried about chasing the dollar than they are the health of the employee. And those are the ones that we're going to go after as a union and try to take those people to somewhere they've never been before, and that's to be part of the labor union.
All right, thank you. We're talking with Billy Dycus. He's president of Tennessee AFL-CIO. Now we're going to turn it over to our callers. If you're on the line, hold on. If you want to call in, the number is right below there on the screen, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.